Lawsuits is a charity fashion event. We're an official partner event of the Princess Margaret Cancer Foundation. And while there's a bunch of different components to it, in a nutshell, we put top legal leaders on a runway for the early detection of cancer. And leadership is about inspiring people to do work that really matters, at its simplest form. Take chances, make sure they're calculated, do your due diligence, don't walk into something foolishly or blindly. But if you've done those things and you think there's a realistic possibility or greater likelihood of you finding some real happiness and fulfillment from something new versus staying where you are, do it 100% of the time.
Kerri, welcome. Thank you for joining me on the podcast. I was looking forward to having you here and excited we finally could get this together.
Thank you for having me, Gary. Such a pleasure, as always.
And Kerri, certainly we've known each other for many years.
We have.
We met about 10 years ago, or nearly 10 years ago. Kerri had just graduated law school, and those were the early days of the
very funny.
But
let's go with that.
Yeah, so that's our story. We'll stick to it.
Yeah.
But Kerri, many of the listeners will not necessarily know your background. So what's Kerri's story? Where did Kerri grow up? A little bit of your upbringing to kick us off.
Sure. So born and raised in Kingston, Ontario, proud Kingstonian. Most of my family's still there, and I made my way to Toronto originally in about 1998, and bought a house here and started a life here, and then returned to law school actually back to Kingston in 2001, which is when I started law school, and I was there from 2001 to 2004. And, summered and articled with a Toronto firm throughout that time, Osler, Husk and Harcourt, and returned to Toronto after I was called and started working back at Osler and was there for a few years and kind of migrated into family law, big leap. I was a commercial litigator before that. And that's a long story that we could go down a rabbit hole on, Gary, which we talked about, but I won't go there. But switched into family law, and I've had kind of a series of roles over the years. I started at a mid-sized firm in Toronto, full service, and where I kind of made my way up there and eventually partnered, and then I ran my own firm for a few years, and that was when you and I met. It was during that time, and after made a move from there, and a lateral move, and I was a partner at another firm, eventually the managing partner. And that kind of brings us through to present day, where we are now.
No, thank you, Kerri. And it's always good to understand people's upbringing and background, because we know many times there's many people that we've met along the way, and they're like, what's Kerri's background or Gary's background?
Yeah.
So this gives us a nice opportunity for that setup. So,
yeah, for sure.
Kerri, one of the things I want to talk to you about is, first of all, if you could introduce lawsuits. What is lawsuits? And hopefully many of our listeners will already be familiar with it as we try to make a big splash considering the cause. But talk us through what it is first, and then afterwards a bit about how it came about to be.
Yeah, for sure. So Lawsuits is a charity fashion event. We're an official partner event of the Princess Margaret Cancer Foundation. And while there's a bunch of different components to it, in a nutshell, we put top legal leaders on a runway for cancer, for the early detection of cancer in this case. And so judges and lawyers on the runway every year, we put somewhere between sort of 30, 35 lawyers on the runway, and we raise money for the Princess Margaret. And you've done it, so Gary, you were in my inaugural show, and it's lots of fun, and it's kind of taken on a life of its own. And over the last few years, it's a beautiful event, and we have a lot of fun with it. You're on the committee, and we have a lot of fun.
When Kerri, my claim to fame now is that I'm a retired model, but I'm a model scout. Thanks.
That's actually true, though.
Except I don't add it to my LinkedIn because I feel like it would attract the wrong demographic.
Also possibly true.
Uh, but thanks to you for inviting me to be on the committee. It's been a lot of fun. But what
Oh, my
prompted
honor.
starting lawsuits, Kerri? What was sort of the impetus behind getting this wonderful event going?
Yeah, so as you know, Gary, I unfortunately lost my aunt to cancer in November of 2017, and she was an incredible woman, and my family was really overwhelmed with grief at that time, and you know, I almost immediately started thinking about how I could do something meaningful to sort of channel that grief in a constructive way, if you will. And I'd always loved fashion, and I was very passionate about the Princess Margaret and the work that they do. But I started thinking about how, as lawyers, we're really uniquely positioned in that we're embedded in a community of people that have tremendous influence and power and intelligence and all of these sort of wonderful things. And I started thinking about, how we could go about doing something to bring together that community to do something sort of bigger than ourselves. And in this case, in support of the early detection of cancer or cancer research and care. And so it was really about kind of transforming something personal into something that could help others.
And Kerri, certainly, I think the personal story behind it is compelling because cancer, unfortunately, has touched many people's lives, and we all know someone,
Absolutely.
whether directly or indirectly, that has been affected.
That's
So
right.
it's hard to argue with the worthiness of the cause. So just because it's an opportunity for any listeners to get involved, how could people get involved? What are the various ways they can contribute to the event?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's actually that's an unlimited list, really, because we're still figuring that out, Gary. I mean, you and I are speaking weekly, and usually multiple times a week. And this thing's really evolving. We're learning as we go. We're not event planners and none of this. This is what we do with with an event that we're all inspired and care about. And so, I mean, there's the traditional ways you can join our committee and support us in some capacity, and everybody has different roles. There's people like you that help me. Well, you help in a lot of ways, but one of the main ways right now is you've helped me put together the list of people that we need to be on the runway to really make this thing successful. And there's fundraising, there's raising awareness, there's selling tickets, there's helping with logistics to do with the events. There's people could blog about the event and help us in that capacity, like social media, because we're exploring getting someone on to do all of that at this point, because I can't continue to do this and I'm certainly not the best person. But there's just, there's an endless um, number of ways that people can help, and we love the help and we embrace it. And I mean, the kind of people that want to get involved and do this kind of work are really, you know, they tend to be very unique people. That some of the busiest people I know that have the least amount of time, but somehow are so generously spirited with their time, energy, and resources that they make this a priority. And so, we always find a way to try to get people involved, and, we want to give back, and not, and of course the cause is the crucial manner with which we want to give back. But we also, all these people that support us in different ways, often they have little businesses or this, that, and the other thing. We're trying to figure out how to kind of cross promote them and support them and all of those sorts of things. So it's really fun in that way. And you can really get creative and figure out how to go about this, and we're doing it. There's no roadmap. There's no how to on this. We're doing it as we go. It's exciting. It's exciting, really inspiring work.
When, as you said, Kerri, if you want something done, you give it to a busy person. So to your point,
Yeah.
some of
Yes.
the business people are often the one that finding the time to contribute to something like this. But
Yeah.
uh, and now I'll speak as a, sort of as a committee member that works to support you behind the scenes. But ultimately, whether people are interested in attending the event and contributing in some way, whether certainly from a fundraising perspective, any donations are welcome. People want
Yeah.
to be models, certainly reach out to us.
Yeah. All
That
of that.
creation. The even volunteers. I mean, anytime you do something like this, all those categories are important, but it is, and yeah, this is ongoing, right? So even from a modeling perspective, we need a pipeline of models, just like any
Yeah.
model agency.
We do. Yep.
So if whether we can't have somebody to model this year, we can certainly have them as a model in the future, and that's the path.
Yeah, that is the path. And we're constantly doing that. And we're trying to figure out too, how to put the right people on each year because we don't want one profile. We want, there's lawyers out there doing really incredible things in all different capacities and we want to represent all of that. And it's so we look for people to, which is why we have so many scouts, if you will, on our team constantly looking to find these successful, wonderful things that people are doing and put us in contact with them and all that good stuff. It's fascinating, really.
When Kerri, I think anyone that has thought about starting an event or any fundraiser of this nature, they would need to talk to you to really understand how much work really goes into it and how
Yeah,
logistics behind the scenes become a true full-time job. Uh,
yeah,
and I know I'm
it's
preaching to the
really true.
converted.
Yeah, yeah.
So let me ask you this.
Hmm.
Sort of, let's go back to 2018. So
Yeah,
you really had the motivation of uh, what happened with your aunt and some, like I said, things that have touched all our lives in one way or another, genetic
yeah,
predisposition that makes this challenging for sort of the family members more broadly. How do you go from that to putting the initial event together? Like, what did it take to assemble that initial support? Because I remember since 2018, this was a fantastic event. Like, there was great momentum since day one.
yeah, yeah. No, there has been tremendous momentum since day one. And, what did it take to put that together, that inaugural event? Well, you know, I'm to be honest, Gary, I didn't know what I was getting myself into, to be honest. And I think at the time it obviously took, a bit of courage, um, a willingness to take on something and go into sort of an unknown that I was a lawyer. I didn't have the first clue about any of this. I obviously a healthy dose of obstinance didn't hurt and humility because there were a lot of no's along the way. And I think I had to believe at that time, and I still believe this, and this, that the work um, and the cause mattered more than any potential rejection or failure ever could. And I think, that's was the starting point of all of that is all of that. And I think also it was community. I mean, I got to know you. That was the exact time that we got to know one
That's right.
another. And, I was told you got to get Gary affiliated with this thing in some capacity. And you were one of the first people that I spoke with, and you came on, with just like a force. And, Fernando Garcia came on at that time and a lot of tremendous friendships were formed at that time that, have just grown over the years. And but without that community, the inaugural event wouldn't have been, or it wouldn't have been what it was. And that first event allowed us to 6 years later relaunch in, 2024 and really explode this thing because we had the critical people that we came back to and we kind of regrouped and rebranded and grew and did all of the things. So I think that there's no underestimating the power of community. I didn't do this, right? Like everybody says, this thing that you did, you know, I don't view it that way. this is not a me, this is an us. You can't do something like this with one person, and that would be really arrogant to suggest on any level that that's what happened, because it just practically speaking, it didn't happen that way, you know?
For sure. One, Kerri, I mean, because I've sort of witnessed it along the way.
Yeah,
Any initiative, it's like an entrepreneurial story. It starts with a
yeah,
founder, it starts with an idea person,
yes,
but
that's exactly
also
right.
one that is, while they're not along way along the journey, somebody that keeps this thing moving, because
Yeah,
you'll have people that contribute in different levels of capacity, but it really requires some quarterbacking. So the
yeah,
learning for anyone, and this would be the same whether it's entrepreneurship or they're looking to do an event, is that
yep,
build a good team around you, have a clear vision around what needs to be done. And that's what you've done, which is fantastic, because we would not have all these lawyer models otherwise. And
oh,
Princess
well, thank
Margaret
you.
would have not had well over $1 million in funding since then. And Kerri, you may have
Yeah.
sort of the exact data, but I know it's been at least that since the genesis
Yeah,
of.
it's about right where we are actually at this point. Yeah. And
Uh,
which is really exciting when you think that, I'm really honest about this. The first year I didn't I didn't have the first clue about how to raise money whatsoever. I'm not even sure that I had a deck back then. I can't recall, but I'm not even sure. But in any event, I was just so thrilled to get people at that show, and the people that I had on that runway, and Aaron Franks, and emceeing this thing, and or co-emceeing it, and just the excitement. We filled that room and we raised some money, and I was just you know so incredibly honored.
So, Kerri, certainly some of the friendships and some of the network that everyone got to make because of being part of this is carries through well beyond the event. I think this was powerful about this, and any volunteer organization to, we would have not met but for this, and
Yep,
certainly what's blossomed into a great friendship would have not started but for this.
yep,
So I think as we encourage people to get involved with lawsuits, or frankly any cause that they're passionate about, what's the biggest thing beyond the cause is that it's also great for you, great to meet other people that think alike, and it's an environment well beyond our day-to-day jobs, especially for lawyers. We know what the demands of those jobs are like.
yep.
To be able to build relations with people in a context that's far more fun and far more casual.
Yeah, I mean, that's, Gary, we've talked about this many times. You know, this whole journey for me has been extraordinarily beautiful, regardless of the difficult moments and times that led to the evolution of this event. Um, you know, I can't begin to express the level of gratitude I have for the relationships I've formed because of this event, the work, the cause. It means more to me than I could ever possibly put into words. Um, I mean, there are professional reasons why it's incredible, but the personal ones, which is what I'm more alluding to it in this moment, is, there's just no way to ever articulate that and give it the credence it deserves. You know, you you these friends and relationships that I've formed throughout this thing. These are some of my closest friendships, which I deeply, deeply care about. So many of the people I've met through this thing. We think of lawyers as and judges and those things, and people, we get a really bad rap, by the way, Gary. We're pretty good, but
I
we
believe it.
think of lawyers as being competitive with one another, or at times, or unapproachable or intimidating, or these sorts of things. And listen, I get it, but I'm here to tell you I formed relationships with what would be deemed to be some of the most powerful, incredible, brilliant legal minds in the country, whether they're bench or bar. And these are some of the kindest, most thoughtful, compassionate, hardworking, authentic, and people I've ever had the great fortune of getting to know. And that's the truth. I consider a lot of these people my closest friends, and um, these with the brilliance comes the ability to affect change, and but they choose to do it. They choose to invest their time, energy, resources into something like this, and this is not something they have to do, but they do, and that's a real testament. And so the network of, you and I know this, because we're intimately involved in it. We see it on the day to day, but it's really invaluable in all manner of speaking. You know,
What's impressive, Kerri, as well, is we have had some of the most accomplished individual lawyers, managing partners,
that's right.
chairs of the various firms, some of the GCs of the largest
That's right.
organizations in the country, judges at various levels, and what is impressive is the level of humility when we're working something like
It's
this.
crazy. I know.
And that to me has been, despite being in the ecosystem a lot more than sort of an average individual that is not in the law space, is that when we've been sort of hand in hand working together on this, it's their level of humility and compassion. It just really gives you a nuance that when we think of our whether it's executives, whether it's the entire government ecosystem or judicial, et cetera, that we really have good people along the way. And then it's only when you see them in this environment that you're like, the humanity really sips through in a way that is not easy to see otherwise.
Yeah, and we're fortunate, Gary. And I agree with everything you said there. You know, we're united on a very, with respect to a very difficult cause. I mean, cancer is the number one killer in our country, as you mentioned at the beginning. You don't come across anyone these days that doesn't have a story, whether it's your personal story, or it's somebody that you lost or someone that you know and love that's fighting this disease. And maybe it's a story of triumph more so than a story of loss. Who knows? But regardless, we're all united in that this cause affects everybody. And, you know, when you get an opportunity to work with the people that we do with on a cause like this, and people really lean into it the way that we see. I mean, you get to see the beauty in the people, the beauty in the collective effort, in what leadership can look like when when you know really incredible people unite over something like this. It's powerful and it's beautiful, and it's you learn a ton about leadership. Um, we often think that leadership is about, not that we think it's about, but it gets attributed to titles and rankings and accolades and all of these sorts of things. And then you you strip it down to its raw, the basics here. And leadership is about inspiring people to do work that really matters, you know, at its simplest
What,
form.
Kerri, I want to extract what you just said because it's so powerful, right? Leadership is about inspiring people to do work that really matters. And it's ultimately, regardless how you go about doing it, regardless of what your personality is like, and how you come about doing it, that's really the ultimate effect that you want.
Yeah, yeah, it is. And that's
So
why this work you and I, we always want to do this because first of all, it's for a fantastic cause, but it's just that kind of grounds you in a way. Wouldn't you agree? Like it constantly, it's a reminder that um, we're really doing something that's helping other people, and that's phenomenal, you know?
I think the switching gears, Kerri, is
Yeah,
important. Um, it's that the sometimes when we're in the same mode of our professional lives, and we and certainly with our uh, we tend to spend most of our time in two modes, which is sort of our professional life and then a family life,
yeah,
and you have those two personas in a way. But then this is really puts you in a different environment where other characteristics come out that is
yeah,
that powerful. But I think that's important for us. There's a reason why volunteering is, and so that civic duty is instilled since the school system, is because these things cultivate a certain portion of our very being that would not come out but for these
That's
opportunities.
right. It really builds character. And, you know, I'm learning. I'm a human being every day. I've good days and bad days, just like everybody else. And striving to always be the best version of myself. And there's days where you feel like you fall short. I was, I handled something poorly, I this and that, and that's just human, and that's okay. But at times this work will really remind me and get me kind of back in check, and particularly as I attend a lot of the Princess Margaret events, and they're beautifully inspirational. And I every time I get asked, I go, is unless I'm like out of the country or something, and I just sit there and I leave better, and that's kind of what this work does. It keeps me sort of centered. And I think that's what you're really talking about, you know? It's powerful in that
100%.
way.
So, Kerri, I want to pivot to a
Yeah,
different type of question. And this is
sure.
because you have many lawyers that go through career evolution, et cetera. And you're a prime example because you went from commercial litigation to family law, which inevitably has litigation built in to some extent, but they are still very different
Yeah.
gears. And many lawyers sometimes sort of fall into an area of practice almost by sort of opportunity, but then are afraid to reinventing themselves because of the sort of level of like the unknown. What advice would you have for lawyers that are considering pivots or that say they wonder sometimes what it's like to go through a pivot?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And I'm pivoting right now, as you know, Gary, and I have been for the past few months. And it's one of those things that, and I've done it a few times. I've recreated myself a few times and pivoted, as you're describing it. And it's never without its challenges. And I speak with a lot of people about this, a lot of young people that want to shift gears or switch careers and those sorts of things. And what I'll say is this: is you can always, where you are right now, and you can stay. And but if you're unhappy and you're unfulfilled and those sorts of things, what's the worst thing that can happen? You know what I mean? Get out of your own way, take chances. I've never ever, um, and I don't think you have either, uh, pivoted or made a significant change in my personal or my professional life that didn't come without fear, pain, anxiety, all of those things. But when you lean into it, you follow your gut and your intuition, with some judgment in there. I'm not saying, don't be
Yes.
reckless, but give it a shot. We've got one
100%.
life, one kick at this can, take chances, make sure they're calculated, do your due diligence. Don't walk into something foolishly or blindly. But if you've done those things and you think there's a realistic possibility or greater likelihood of you finding some real happiness and fulfillment from something new versus staying where you are, do it 100% of the time. And that would be the advice that I give. And it's not to say that you couldn't end up down the road thinking, "I shouldn't have done this." Perhaps, but I don't think like that. I don't look at a single professional or personal decision that I've made as being a mistake. I look at it, it's just a catalyst for the next great thing. And if you view your life and your evolution like that, um, you're gonna continue to do really exciting things and continue to elevate yourself and to push the limits and to keep the boundaries. And I think that's what life's about, and that's what your professional life should be about as well. Don't sit stagnant, you know?
And Kerri, it's great advice. I tell people this all the time.
Yeah,
You will struggle far more with the what ifs that you never tried than the
absolutely.
mistakes you made trying along the way.
Yeah, yeah. And you don't have regrets when you take a chance, even if if from an external perspective someone looks at it as a failure. Emily, you know what a failure is, and like and even if it were a failure, who
Yep,
cares? You have to have failure to have the next big win. That's how that
100%.
builds grit, and heart, and the stamina and the perseverance and the resilience you need to elevate it beyond what you even thought possible the last time. So, and all about that. You're the king of doing these types of things, right? And I respect that. Take chances. Life's short.
Kerri, thank you. Great advice there. I want to pivot to a portion of our podcast that we call the rapid fire
All
questions.
right.
So this is sort of the first answer that comes top of mind. We don't have to overthink it.
Do it.
How many languages do you speak?
1.
Excellent. What? uh, well, when you're in the languages business, you kind of have to ask this
Yeah, I
question.
don't want to reciprocate that question because I know the answer. And it's far more than 1 for you.
What word do you hate, if any?
Can't.
That's right. What word do you have a hard time pronouncing, if any?
Worcestershire.
Yeah.
Don't even think I said it right there. Did I? How do you say that?
I mean,
Worcestershire.
I would say the majority of the planet would have trouble with the Worcestershire or whatever.
Yeah, that
it's not
one. That one.
What is your favorite word in any language? It doesn't have to be in English, is my point, but
Okay.
just as to not limit you to strictly English.
Okay. In terms of the significance of the word, probably resilience.
Resilience, yeah, that's a great word. Resilience is important.
Okay.
It ties into everything you talked about.
Yeah, I think resilience is really important.
And what is one word to describe yourself by?
Evolving.
Evolving. I love that. It's and I can attest to all of that. And it's consistent evolution can only be a great thing, especially at a time in history where we all have to evolve quickly and keep up with technology.
No
We never
kidding.
had.
I mean, literally. What a crazy world we're in right now, and just rapid change, and yeah. So it's been a crazy ride, and I'm enjoying all of it.
Kerri, appreciate you joining me on the podcast today. It's been fantastic having you here, and as I expected, time flew by.
Yeah,
But
it really did.
enjoyed every moment of it.
Thank you for having me, Gary. You're such a dear friend to me, you know that, and this has been a tremendous pleasure. So thank you.